We all know each other here, but for the sake of the people watching on limaohio.com, let me do some introductions. I'm Doug Olson, publisher of the Lima News, and with me today we have Jim Crummell, editor, David Trinko, managing editor, Craig Kelly, our political reporter, and photographer Craig Orobs. This forum will be more of a conversation about your views and vision as you seek to become the next mayor of Lima. Each of us will be asking questions, and for the sake of full disclosure, we have also done a forum with Mayor Berger. We're asking similar questions of both of you, but there's also specific questions that we're asking for each candidate. A story that will be written in question and answer format will be done on each candidate in the Sunday, November 5th edition of the Lima News. And a video will also appear that day on our website, limaohio.com, and will remain on through Election Day. Okay? So with that, let me ask the first question, if I might. Mr. Cheney, what do you think are the strengths and opportunities of the city of Lima?
Well, the strengths are our people. Without a doubt, the citizens that make up this fine city. The opportunities, I believe, in many cases have not been there for the citizens to succeed in a manner of which I would like them to see them succeed. When I talk about in the city of Lima, Ohio, 1/3 of our residents are living below the poverty line. That is absolutely unacceptable in the Keith Cheney administration. The strengths which we also have is certainly being the quadrant of a number of state routes as well as an interstate system. So when you look at the ability for businesses to get to Lima or to export their product, whether it's by semi or rail, there are some great opportunities, which makes us uniquely placed. There again, I think our city has not taken full opportunity of that system that's in place. And I tie that back to the way the city of Lima currently does business is simply in a non-business friendly manner. I've met with a number of business individuals who have either looked to do business in Lima or are doing business in Lima, and whether it was an expansion of their business or a redevelopment of their business, there are just so many encumbersome roadblocks that it's quite easier to go somewhere else and conduct business. That has to change for all of the opportunities to open up to our citizens.
Great. Thank you.
And you talked some about some of the weaknesses. What are some of the threats that we face?
Well, the greatest threat we face is competition from other municipalities. The big one that we always hear about is Finley. And, you know, it is forever a discussion, whether it's in the coffee shops or the restaurants or in people's homes. And they talk about, well, you know, Finley has this and Finley has that. And, you know, let me tell you a couple of things that businesses look at when they decide where they're going to locate. One of them, obviously, is household income, median household income. What monies are available for individuals to have discretionary spending or spending where they're going to decide where to shop, eat, entertain themselves. The Finley median household income far outweighs Lima's. And as a matter of fact, according to the United States Census, over the past 28 years, using equivalent dollars of 2016, the median household income in Lima, Ohio has declined by $4,177. So that's one of the biggest threats we have. The other thing that a business looks at is, what are the crime rates? Because obviously with businesses, they have to look at the crime, and for a number of years, this administration has attempted to play that off as a myth or a perception. Well, figures can lie, but liars can figure, but figures don't lie. And when you look at the 2016 Uniform Crime Report provided by the Lima Police Department, presented to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, it is very simple. Our serious and violent crimes have raised by 10%. So the two threats that face Lima as we look at bringing in new business and convincing people to come here is our household income as well as our crime. You addressed the first one to get to the second one, and I certainly will address the crime issue in a much more rapid fashion than the current administration has.
Let's talk money. You've talked a lot about adding police to fight crime, and you've also mentioned a proposal for building a new fire station. What specific areas of the budget would you cut to make room for these projects?
Well, first of all, with crime, you either pay on the front side or you pay on the back side. This administration has decided to pay on the back side by the loss of businesses, by individuals that have moved out of this city because they no longer want to be a part of a crime-ridden city, which the population has dropped nearly 8,000 individuals. Those are income tax paying individuals, which obviously lowers your income. There are opportunities, I am certain, within that budget, and the one thing that I will implement immediately, the acronym is LCSI, Lima Common Sense Initiatives. And that will be a case where every single city department will have a thorough evaluation to determine their policies, procedures, rules, and regulations, which ultimately will result in cost-saving measures, not only in finances, but also in time. There are many avenues that things can be done differently to address where you're going to get the money for the extra police officers. First of all, this administration has decided to build up a net worth laying in a bank account of $8 million. That's on the back of the city residents. That's on the back of not being willing to provide the safety necessary to keep them safe in their homes and businesses and on the streets. But also the same thing can be said about fire. This administration closed 2 fire stations, one on West Spring Street, which dramatically affects the residents of the 4th and 7th wards, dramatically increases the response time. A fire burns at double rate for every single minute. The current fire protection for the 4th and 7th ward comes out of the Main Street fire station. That is a lot longer than having a station in the heart of the 4th and 7th wards, sitting on Spring Street. The other one that was closed, and just as concerning, if not more, the response time to Lima Memorial Hospital was literally a minute and a half. The best response time today to get to the hospital sitting in the 3rd ward runs at approximately 7 to 8.5 minutes. Keeping in mind that a fire burns twice or doubles every minute that it's alive, that puts a lot of families' properties and, more importantly, their lives at risk. So you look at building a better city where you increase the income tax base, not the income tax, of which my opponent supported twice, and I will never support an income tax increase. You make cuts where cuts make sense, and I believe in this particular case, that's in the operations of many of our departments.
Let me just ask a follow-up on that, if I might. So you mentioned Lima Common Sense Initiative and departmental review. How long do you think that review would take, or how long do you expect it to take? And is there a particular order that you would review the departments in? Do you have in your mind where you would start?
I'll tell you exactly where I will start. I will start with the employees. for too many years, if not forever. The actual employees have been left out of the government system, and they simply are expected to come to work, do their 8 hours, and go home. I learned in business that you can sit in a boardroom or you can sit in a plush office and you realize you make no money there. The money's made on the street. In my particular business, it was made in our convenience stores, where the most important people are the cashiers. In the city, you look at each department, and just talking to different individuals that work throughout different departments in the city, they have some great ideas. They've never been asked to share those ideas. They can figure out ways that are cost-saving measures. And so they will be a part of this. How soon will this start? This will start immediately. My department heads will immediately be given a directive. It will be laid out in format that these are the questions I want answered. I will be an active participant in that, and will encourage every single employee in the city to participate. That's where the best ideas sometimes come from. I also think that we have stagnation after 28 years, that many of these individuals have been in their jobs for many years, even the department heads. And so it's get up, go to work, do your job, go home. Fresh new energy coming into a business, or a city in this case, can offer vibrancy that says, okay, you know, the old adage, we've always done it this way, so that's the way we're going to do it. That doesn't work in a Keith Cheney world. I want to look at things from the inside, saying, okay, just because we've always done it this way, is there a better, more cost-efficient way of doing it? And take that into consideration on making changes.
Thank you. So, looking at the economy, where do you see the economy heading in the next few years? And as mayor, what effect would that have on the way you would want to run the city?
Well, look, in today's Lima that we live, I don't see a thriving economy. You know, it reminds me that starting in 1999, Dave Berger promised that global energy was coming to Lima, Ohio. It was going to bring with it good paying jobs. And that would be the salvation to Lima's economic downturn. And he rode that wave for many, many years, every election cycle, 4 election cycles to be factual. And as a matter of fact, the Lima News wrote an article, Where is Global, in 2005 or 2008. And his response to the article was, those who are skeptical will remain skeptical. That is their privilege, Berger said. But I am absolutely confident that it will happen. That was July of 2008. In March of 2015, when they filed bankruptcy, Berger, a longtime supporter of the project, continued to say he's hoping the bankruptcy will help the project. Well, the final result is a concrete pad that lays out on South Metcalf Street, looks like a swimming pool when it rains, cost this community many, many dollars in time, efforts, and finances, and tax monies, and ultimately we got nothing. That's not going to happen. I have already met with investors, entrepreneurs, and businesses that have assured me, when I'm elected mayor, that they will come to Lima, bring their business to Lima, and do business in Lima. I am confident that will happen. And some of these jobs are not entry-level jobs. But the bottom line is we have to be a business-friendly community. I can change that on day one, to open our arms up to the opportunities that are there.
Are there any, you're talking about speaking with businesses, just to follow up real quick, speaking about some businesses, entrepreneurs, are there any that you can point out to publicly at this point?
No, and I'll tell you why I won't. Because that puts their business venture at jeopardy. The worst things you can do is jump out there and say, such and such company is going to come to Lima, and that exploits them to the opportunity of competition coming, or exploits them to cost-driven negatives that they don't need. But I will say this, hold me accountable.
Can you classify what kinds of jobs? Are you talking manufacturing? Are you talking retail, service?
They are a culmination of many different jobs.
Along those same lines, let me ask you, what's your view of the work that the Allen Economic Development Group has been doing?
I think the formation of the new EDGE group is going to be very, very beneficial to Lima, Allen County. When you look at the person that they put in place to run that organization, thus being Jeff Sprague, Jeff is a very sound, business-friendly, oriented type of individual that understands we have to be a friend of business. He's willing to work the long hours, to go out and do the necessary things to make businesses want to come to Lima, Allen County. The same can be said with the leadership of that group on the business end of it, where you have Mike Swick from Lima Memorial Hospital and Phil Buell from Superior, that are two very successful, sound business individuals. The new structure of EDGE, I believe, will give us an advantage in being able to go out and court new businesses to come into Lima, as well as supporting existing businesses that want to expand. I'm very pleased with what I see out of that organization. I look forward to working with them.
All right, shifting gears a little bit, we know that there are a lot of people in the city that are trying to improve their lot in life. And we know that there are some programs in place to try and help them. Some people would say that those are not connecting with each other. So what role should the mayor play in helping bridge that gap?
Communication. Communication is the easiest answer there is. And that doesn't mean sitting in the glass house or traveling all over the United States with the Mayoral Association to benefit your personal gains of here's who I am, but it means being on ground in the city of Lima, taking those programs, working directly with them, and making sure that the citizens understands what's available. All too often, it's simply a lack of communication. You know, you have to go out in the neighborhoods, as I have done throughout this campaign, talk with the individuals, find out what their needs are, and then relate those needs to programs that are available for them. It's no different than the heroin epidemic or the illicit drug epidemic that we face today. You don't see advertising that's up on billboards or in advertising, other formats where it explains to individuals, here's the programs that are available to you. That's shameful. You know, he spends $35,000 on advertising, promoting how great downtown is, especially over the last 6 weeks, great political advertising at the cost of the city. Look, it's not safe. Let's fix the crime downtown first. Make it safe. Bring people downtown, but let's use those dollars instead to explain the programs that are available to our citizens that help them. And you're exactly right. There are many, many residents in this city that are looking for a way out, looking for hope.
Just to be clear, you're talking about utilizing public money to promote the particular programs that would aid these folks, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, look, you use those funds for advertising, whether you're promoting to come downtown or to go to one of the other sectors in Lima. You can also use part of those funds to say, okay, look, if you're struggling, we're here to help you. And in many cases, people are just looking for hope and help.
Along that line, how do you convince the African American community that their issues are important to you? Your paths really haven't crossed, you know.
Well, first of all, I personally came up with the theme of my campaign, a better Lima for all. And that was easy to do because that's what I believe in. I've watched the current administration every 4 years go to the Black community and say to them, look, come aboard, vote for me. I'm going to do this, this, and this for you. And I've watched that miserably fail. Today, as we said here, there is one Black police officer on the streets in Lima, Ohio. That department currently exists of 77 active officers and 4 in the academy. That's a dismal, shameful percentage of officers on our street. We have a city that is between 26 and 28% Black. That department should be representing that population. There's nothing been done that has turned that around in 28 years. As a matter of fact, it's went south. I also attended every function that I was invited to attend, whether it was the Black Ministerial Association Town Hall or whether it was the 2 debates hosted by the NAACP. Look, that's my job, to go out and not pick and choose who I'm going to represent or who I'm going to meet with, as my opponent did, and use some lame excuse that he don't agree with the president of the NAACP. Well, let me tell you, if he don't agree, then he should join the organization and place his vote on the next ballot when they elect a president. I believe that that organization selected who they wanted to be their president. That's not my choice, that's theirs. I respect that organization the same as I do every organization in the city of Lima that is legitimate. And so therefore, if you put up your block and tackle program, instead of going out and meeting with the residents and talking with those organizations, you're never going to truly accomplish anything in a minority community. I have established a very good relationship throughout that community, and I will continue to foster that relationship. And when I'm there, I will continue to attend those events, have an open door policy, and work with the minority community the same as I will any other ethnic community or ethnic individuals in our city.
Do you have any specific ideas about how to recruit more African-American officers?
I sure do. And I find it hard to believe this hasn't been done, but maybe it's because you don't have the relationships with law enforcement that I'm fortunately to have. Look, we have a number of Black law enforcement officers that have now retired. We have some active Black officers on the Allen County Sheriff's Office. Go to those individuals, make them a partner with the mayor and the Lima Police Department, and go to the schools, talk to the young people, explain to them the opportunities of what a great job that really is. Also you can look at not only going to the high school, start in the middle schools. It's sort of funny that when you go to elementary schools and you talk to students and say, what do you want to be? And I really don't care what ethnic group they're from. The majority of kids will tell you, I want to be a policeman. I want to be a fireman. Then as they grow older, all of a sudden that changes. So at one time, that may have been a child's dream. I believe that if done properly, and you go and take the job to them, you're going to have a much more successful rate. And, it's a case where sometimes individuals are more comfortable talking with people that they can relate to easier than myself. So I would go right with those officers and talk to those kids and let those officers tell them, here's why I made my decision to become a policeman. Here's what it has benefited me in my life. And here's what I've been able to provide for my family.
Another follow-up to that. I think you just mentioned that you support any legitimate organization that's in the city of Lima. Do you have an example of an organization that you wouldn't consider legitimate?
No, none. But just in case a radical group would all of a sudden decide that they have no attachment to anybody, such as an ISIS organization, look, we're done.
ISIS and KKK are out there.
Look, that's exactly correct. And I don't condone either one of their actions.
Can you give us an example of how you found compromise with a group of people you don't typically agree with?
Well, normally I'm a pretty easygoing guy that just goes to the communication. I mean, you know, look, whether you're having a debate at your family dining room table or you don't fully agree with an individual, that individual has their beliefs and they strongly believe, just like you may believe on the other side of the aisle. So listen to them and then determine, okay, let's find some median way to get through this. Quite frankly, I can give you an exact example because I haven't had that happen. I am more of a type of individual that sits back, listens to what their point of view is, and then intertwine it with my belief and come to a median in the road that says, okay, you know, we're going to both get a little bit here. And it reminds me of, I think Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, very strong Democrat, very strong Republican, was able to move America forward coming out of a dire financial strait that hit us negative with President Carter administration, where we had double-digit inflation, double-digit interest rates, unemployment rates at an all-time high, short of. And it was sort of unique how they operated. In public, you would have thought they were two titans going to battle. But that was all for show because they were some of the best of friends. They continually, every week, at least once, if not twice a week, had dinner together. And what they would do is they would determine that the Speaker of the House, Speaker O'Neill, wanted this, and he really wanted it. And Reagan knew that those votes may not be there from that side of the aisle. So what he would do is he would say, all right, Tim, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you that one, but you go in there and say you want two things because you're only going to get one. And then they would flip-flop that and do the opposite when Reagan really wanted something that Speaker O'Neill knew his people weren't going to support. But he would go to them and say, you know, the president says he wants this and that. He wants three things. We're not giving them to him. Tip would negotiate with his own people. He'd come out, ultimately give the president what he wanted. So it was a very good line of communication that they built and trust between the two of them that said, okay, we're going to move America forward, but here's how we're going to do it.
So would you describe yourself as more principled or more pragmatic?
Well, look, I don't think you separate the two of them in their entirety. The principles that I believe in are the principles that I believe in. However, that simply goes along with the good book, of which I'm not going to violate what's in the Bible. That's just very simple. But if it's a point of view that I have economically or in a structure like that, where I realize that the other individual may have a better way of getting to the end of the road, then you know what? I'm going to take a hard look at that. And if that's the way we get to the end of the road for the success of this city, that's what we're going to do.
So sometimes the ends would justify the means?
Absolutely. As long as they are legal, legitimate, and ethical.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, getting back to downtown, talk about downtown, but on the subject of development downtown, what would your assessment be of the status of the Road Stay project as it currently stands?
Well, look, I'm a businessman, and I thought it was a pretty good media opportunity for the mayor to stand there with the president of Road State right before the primary election vote was taken, bring all the equipment in downtown, tear down some buildings, and then leave and plant grass. So we now have green space. They still do not have resolution to the properties that they do not own. In business, I have never, ever purchased a new property or went to remodel a store where I bring all of the equipment in, I tear something down, and then I plant grass, because I was going to wait to buy the other building next to that facility. That's costly. Once all of that equipment was downtown, it should not have been brought downtown for a political pop in the media. That should have been brought downtown when every property had been acquired and you were ready to start that project. That's bad business, and that's costly. Currently, the project originally was said to cost $20 million. That goes back 3 years ago. As we all know, costs rise the longer you wait. And so my first concern is, have they reevaluated the true cost factors of the project? My second concern is the total monies that are needed for that project. I lobbied on behalf of Road State to the Port of Regents, and successfully, they give us $5 million. I lobbied to the state legislature through a fund they have available, and they gave us $5 million. That's half of the money that at the time was needed for the project. The mayor said that the city would give the project $3 million, and that money would come out of the hotel motel bed tax. That fund currently sits at just over $600,000, and at the rate of growth of that fund, there's nobody in Lima today alive that will see that fund ever get to $3 million. So I question where the rest of that money is going to come from. Road State then was responsible for the other $7 million. Their goal is to raise that from the private sector. I would like to see that be a little more aggressive on raising that money, so that we knew, in fact, they were going to be able to raise that money and move this project forward.
So along those lines, many people in the community believe that the mayor, the existing mayor, has played a critical role in economic development, from bringing a hotel downtown to the YMCA, to saving the refinery, to sidewalks on the streets. What do you say to those who believe that he played an active role in that and supported that?
Well, first of all, that's his job, and he's been paid very well to do his job. You pick out individual things, and you know, I have just never been an individual that uses the I concept. I believe in the team concept. There are things that I do that I'm not going to stand up and say I've done, which, look, he has done some good things for this community, and I'll be the first to say that. They were not done because he was in shining armor riding a horse. There are many individuals that put forth efforts with the refinery, and let me tell you, again, it goes back to threats. And I want to share this with you because, again, this is factual. When the mayor twice supported raising income tax, his argument to the voters was that if we don't get this income tax, the city's going to go broke. And you can look that up. That's fact. Well, obviously, they were soundly defeated and the city didn't go broke. To say that the refinery was ever going to close is simply a statement that you could never back by fact.
You said it was on.
to build, they were going to close it. But trust me, another oil company will come in and buy that refinery. If you were to start today and want to build a new refinery in the United States of America, it will take you a minimum of 30 years before your first byproduct ever goes through that refinery. And that's due to regulations at the federal level and government involvement. 30 years. If you want to add on to a refinery and expand your current operation, it is approximately 10 years to expand a refinery. So the opportunities for a oil company to have a refinery is not just a case where they decide, hey, we'll go build a new refinery. We have the finances. The problem is the time it takes to build those refineries, to go through the regulatory measures. So do I ever believe that that refinery would have been closed? No, I don't believe that. And quite honestly, I spent 37 years in that industry. I do understand the oil and gas industry.
In cleaning up neighborhoods, tell us how you'd like to see the inspection of rental property take place.
Look, first of all, if we're going to talk about the rental properties, then we'll talk about the landlord proposal. And the administration now wants to twist it and say that was just a suggestion that they put out there. No, it was a written proposal of legislation that was very definite in its writing that they presented to Lima City Council for approval of a landlord registration, which was invasive to those individuals that are paying their own rent, not government assisted rent, saying that the city is going to come in, walk through every one of your rooms, go through your cabinets, and do an inspection internally of your home. That's wrong. I don't support that. I don't support a cost factor where you're going to make bigger government. Government has never been able to grow and solve problems that are there in the private sector of business. So I adamantly oppose that legislation. And it is brought up that I made a speech in the spring and I talked about the out-of-town slumlords, landlords that weren't doing their job, and I was going to institute a registration. That's absolutely factual. Here was the registration. If you go online today, or you go to the county auditor's office or the treasurer's office, and you try to find out who owns a number of these properties, it'll come up an LLC with an address that's out of state. Who do I call if there's a problem there? So what I will mandate is that every landlord assigns a person's name and phone number that you're able to contact at a moment's notice to discuss problems. But more importantly, this administration has had legislation presented to it in a very strong manner under code enforcement. Look, they're talking about the internal inspections. What about the exterior inspections? You drive down the street and you look at the condition of a number of these rentals, and they already have the legislation in place. They have failed to do their job. And normally, something looks like on the outside, I imagine it's pretty convincing that the inside may appear just the same. So by their inadequacies of not using legislation that they currently have available has resulted in the decline in home values. The very first house that the county land bank tore down to help the city with the blighted housing problems in these vacated properties was on West Wayne Street. I researched who owned that property. It was owned by a rental agency out of Nevada who had bought the property, rented it as long as they could, lowering the rent as time went by because they knew the property was declining. invested no money in it, and then when they literally couldn't rent it for any money, walked away, left the tax burden on our community, and left the burden of the home there. When you walked up to that house, as I did on that day, it was pretty easy to see a failed code enforcement never addressed that residency. There were so many exterior deficiencies at that residence that you could have addressed that in the beginning and never ever let that home get in the condition it did.
Following up on what you just mentioned about having the LLCs give you a name of somebody to call, couldn't they just give you their neighbor's name? How do you know that the name that's...
Oh, no. I understand the question now. I'm sorry, Doug. I didn't understand the question.
Yeah.
No, look, this is going to be mandated. We'll put it through legislation. And here is the goal. You know, I was told many years ago, as I was moving up through the ranks of the convenience store company by an individual that I worked directly for, and he would remind you of two things when you would call, and that's before the computer age. So we would call in and get our financial information about the stores. And he would tell you one of two things every single day, and he'd flip-flop them. Greed is a terrible thing. You get more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. Now look, the landlords in our community are a viable asset to this community to provide housing. Unfortunately, over the last 28 years, home ownership has flipped. We're now at 45% home ownership, 55% rentals. Establish a relationship with those landlords, as I have been doing over the last number of months. Don't always just threaten them. How about trying to work with them and saying, hey, look, we need some help here with your property. You know, this current administration, what they want to do is they just want to send out fines. And ultimately, what really gets addressed? It's certainly not the condition of the houses. So the reason I want the name and phone number, and it'll be very clear to those landlords under penalty, that you're going to provide me with the individual that our administration can call and say to you, Doug, you've got a house at 859 West Vine, and a storm come through, knocked the gutter down, tree fell on the one part of the driveway, it needs cleaned up. When can you get this done? You're going to give us a time, and we'll hold you accountable to that.
What's the penalty?
Well, the penalty, if you don't complete what you just go to the code enforcement. It's already there. The penalties are already there in fines. But there again, let's try a different approach of having a business relationship with landlords. And you know what? The out-of-town slumlords that really don't care, as the property I explained to you on West Wayne Street, then become very aggressive now on their properties through your current legislation that's already on the books, and they ultimately will get out of town.
So you're indicating or suggesting that some of the existing code enforcement options are not being enforced.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Look, if they were being enforced, the homes wouldn't be in the conditions they are throughout our city. And look, you look at the homes that have been identified by the county land bank, they are in every single sector of this community. I don't care if you're in the north end, south end, east end, or west end. There are houses in every part of our city that have deteriorated to that extent.
Tell us something you've learned about the city of Lima while you've been campaigning this year.
People, quite frankly, it has been eye-opening as well as a great experience to go to the individuals' homes throughout this city in every quadrant. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to talk to every single resident, but I have talked to a number of them. And that has been beneficial to get to know them and understand the issues that they are facing. They're very open about things that they need help with, or things that are working. And so I think the most beneficial thing that I've received in this campaign is to build a greater portion of the citizenry relationship than I had prior to this campaign. And I'm a people person. I love people. I like to be out there amongst them and talk to them. And I've learned over the years it's better to listen than to talk. And so it's been very enjoyable to me.
I meant to ask you this earlier. I apologize. Do you support the RTA levy?
First of all, the Regional Transit Authority is a viable asset in our community. The situation as it currently is that they may lose funding based on the next budget. Nobody knows whether or not that's factual at this point or not, because that budget hasn't been voted on. The loss appears to be somewhere, if that takes place, between $800,000 and $1 million. And look, I spent an hour and 45 minutes speaking and meeting with the director of the RTA. The sales tax option that they are putting on the ballot raises just over $4 million. Where's the extra money going? Who controls it, and what do you do with it? That's the problem I have. I support the system. I talked to the commissioners who that director had also had communication with, and I was able to open up a better line of communication between the director and the county commissioners, of which they then were trying to work out a avenue with her that would maintain the system in place. You know, again, I'm a businessman, so I think that if you are looking that you may have to face cuts, then look at the total operation. What are the routes? What are the successful routes? You know, and you look that we have many buses that are of the large stature. That's costly to run a big bus versus a smaller bus. And you look at those buses when they drive by you, and they're certainly not full. Could there be some cost-saving measures there? I believe there could be. Also, I look at the vote of their own board, which obviously is more in-depth and active than any of us at this table, I would assume. And it's a 4-3 vote. So I am concerned about the extra $3 million and collecting that from the residents without a clear vision and plan to tell the residents this is where that money's going. I think if we have to seek other opportunity, that's what should be done to provide the transportation necessary for individuals that don't have their own source of transportation.
On your way over here today, you were probably thinking about some of the questions that we were going to ask you. Is there anything that you want to talk about that we didn't ask you?
Crime, because ultimately, and I know that's been a premise of the majority of my campaign, and that is because crime affects everything. It not only affects the lives that crimes are committed against, it affects the lives of those committing the crimes, and ultimately it affects the economic stature of our city. The majority of crimes of the serious and violent nature are committed because of drugs. This administration has done a very, very poor job of addressing the real problem in Lima, and that is the illicit drug epidemic, the heroin epidemic that this city is now facing. My opponent's answer was to blame the heroin epidemic on doctors and dentists. I'm offended by that. That's not what's happened on our streets. These young people that have died and succumbed have played with the devil through the form of heroin, and they've lost. I've been to the funerals, I've been to the viewings of many young people. And it's sad to see their family in a state of despair simply because they decided to use illicit drugs. We had a SWAT team that was inactive for nearly a year because they were not provided with safe equipment. That's not fighting the drug trade. Go after the dealers. Drugs is all about supply and demand. And it's very simple. Go after the supply and work with the demand aspect of it. What causes the demand? Some of it, probably the majority of it, is a mindset, stuck in poverty, stuck in hopelessness. So they turn to feel better to a drug. We have to address those things. We can't keep turning our head to them, or ultimately you're going to continue to increase the drug use. You're going to continue to increase crime, just like we've seen. And where does our city end up?
What's your view of the role Chief Martin has played in his leadership of the police department?
Well, unfortunately, I believe that the morale at the Lima Police Department is probably at an all-time low, and that's unfortunate. I believe in accountability, and I mentioned that in one of the first questions today when I said, hold me accountable. I believe all too often a politician can say things to sound good, make promises, and then walk away from them. I believe in accountability. Chief Martin is the executive of the Lima Police Department. To say that he didn't know how outdated the SWAT vests were or the helmets, that's unacceptable. If you understand that aspect of law enforcement, you know that a vest, bulletproof vest, has a 5-year life expectancy due to the Kevlar breakdown. So it would be pretty simple to understand when you need to buy new vests. I look at that department and I honestly, I feel for the officers that are out here trying to do a job that don't have the proper tools supplied to them. And that comes back to the mayor. Let me tell you, Chief Martin is the executive of the police department, but the ultimate CEO of that department by the city charter is the mayor of the city of Lima. That city charter states that the mayor is the chief conservator of the peace. It's his responsibility to make sure that that Lima Police Department is supported, number one, that the officers have the tools they need to do a job safely to protect our residents, and just as importantly, to go home every night to their families. That has not been done.
We have just a couple of minutes left for any closing comments that you'd like to make.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity, and I deeply appreciate the Lima News giving all of the candidates involved in this election cycle the opportunity to speak to the public through this modern technocracy, as well to answer questions of the editorial board. We no longer can sit back as a city and take 4 more years of where 28 years has led us to an increase in poverty, a decrease in household income, an increase in crime. That no longer can happen. We need to make a change. I offer that change to the residents. I respectfully ask for their vote. And look, it's very simple. I want a better Lima for all. so that these families have an opportunity to, when their children go off to college or universities, they'll be able to come home and raise a family. The opportunities that existed, a safe city that existed when I was growing up. I will work every single day for this community to make those things happen. I ask for the public's vote.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.